Hi, I'm Master April Hawley at American Tiger Martial Arts and Fitness. So what I want to go over is footwork. Footwork, like we say in class, is the foundation for everything else you do. So we went over guarding stance and the video on stances. So you want to be in your guarding stance, have your knees bent, be able to strike from here, all right? So if I need to move forward, and it's really important in our style, the Key and Kung Fu style, we always try and move forward to take the space of our opponent. That's one of the key concepts we have. So if I'm here with this bag and I'm this close to the bag and I throw a punch, you can see that unless I'm willing to lean forward into the bag, I'm not actually close enough to do this. And a lot of students will do something where they punch and they're leaning this whole time. So that master's pose that we talked about before is super important. So we don't want to lean. Watch what I do with my back foot. If I want to get closer, I do something called entering footwork. So I pivot, so it's almost like I'm about to take off on a race. You don't really want to push off on the side of your foot. You know, you never see sprinters do that. And we're not going to have to move far because here I can't reach. I move in that much. Not only can I reach, I could follow through. If I go to the side of this bag, you see my fist is reaching about the core of this bag. So when I'm here and I strike, I can keep my master's pose and I have that good footwork to deliver an effective punch. So, but I only moved maybe 3-4 inches here. So it's super important that you know how to do this. So let me show that part real quick. So we're here, you want to pivot this foot, and don't worry about launching yourself across the mat. Sometimes I say this, people are like, like the little miniature superheroes. So what we want to do is, you just want to, boom, boom. You just want to move maybe 4 to 6 inches at a time while you get used to it. The other thing is when you're doing that, we're not shuffling. We do shuffle sometimes. Usually shuffling happens when you're trying to move into position. But entering footwork, you're basically launching off the back foot, the front foot comes off the ground, and then you push forward. So that's really important that you have that skill. The other thing is you want to make sure when you land, my feet are this far apart. This is a good guarding stance. When I move in, I want to be that far apart again. So I don't do this. And I'm suddenly really wide. I'm also not doing this. Now I'm not stable because my feet are too close together. And I'm definitely not doing this. Which we see all those things happening because everybody's just getting used to it. And there's a lot to martial arts and the little details. So that's entering footwork. When you start out, it's really nice to have your guarding stance be pretty much sideways to your opponent. What it does is that covers up your targets. Really hard to get kicked in the groin this way. And other targets are kind of like a little bit hidden this way. As you get better, it's okay to open that stance up a little bit more because you start to trust yourself that you can kind of pivot to cover the targets, or you're going to be moving forward anyways, and you're going to be delivering the strikes before your opponent does. So a shuffle, though, is where you're moving around like this. So you are actually moving out and sliding the foot in. Again, you kind of want to keep the same distance between your feet. You don't want to shuffle, because when you're here, you're in a vulnerable position. If somebody were to charge in right then, you might get knocked over. So shuffling usually happens when you're freestyling, which is another, or 3 to 5 move defense. You want to shuffle into position. The other thing you don't want to do if you're freestyling is cross your feet over. So if I'm here, I don't want to, I got an opponent, I don't want to do this. You don't want to, like, it looks kind of like I'm pacing like a animal, but you want to shuffle, right? You don't want your feet to cross. As soon as your feet cross, and this is different than a cross step where it's a recovery step, then if somebody were to push into you, then you're going to trip. So it's super important you know the difference. Another thing that's included in footwork is how you throw a punch. So let's say you're doing a jab cross. You do your jab, the shoulders come out, and the cross, you want to pivot that back foot on the ball of your foot. I sometimes see students that attempt the pivot and they over pivot. So now I'm really off balance. Or they go to the top of their toe. So they'll do their jab and then they'll go cross. And they're actually on the top of your foot. It's next to impossible for me to move forward from the top of my foot. So often in our style, since we're taking our opponent's space, I do a jab and a cross to follow up, because that probably knocked that person back. I needed to do that entering footwork anyways in order to get to my next strike. So it's super important that when I do my cross punch, I'm in a position to launch. This is exactly what I showed you earlier on entering footwork. So that cross punch, when you do a roundhouse punch, you also want to pivot the front foot. If you do 2 roundhouse punches, you're pivoting and you're pivoting. When you do, there's certain kicks you do that you need to pivot. So being able to get off on the balls of those, onto the balls of those feet, and make sure you're not pivoting on the heel, because that's not a stable place to do the pivots. So as far as footwork goes, one is really important. You need to be close enough to deliver an effective strike. You want to have good, solid position so that as you're defending yourself, you're not getting knocked to the ground. And when you're throwing strikes, you'll get more power when you add the hips. If I only strike like this with my arm, I only get the power of my arm. I add the shoulders, I get the power of my shoulders added into it. That's better, but as soon as I pivot, I'm adding the power of my hips and my thighs and my legs. So the more body parts you throw into even a basic strike, the better and more effective that strike's going to be. So that's just a little bit about footwork, but I wanted everybody to be maybe working on that in your spare time. So thank you.